Welcome to the Why Did I Get Cancer podcast. I'm Deborah Herlax Enos, a small town body. Mercury in any amount is never a good idea. I still cannot get my head around the fact that we still today, according to Dr. Blodgett, use mercury fillings in people throughout our country. High levels of mercury can lead to nerve issues, respiratory issues. It can impact your brain and your kidneys. And when the mercury goes in your tooth, it doesn't magically no longer impact your body. Every time you have hot tea or hot coffee, it releases more mercury vapor into your body. This is not a good idea. Listen to today's episode to get more tips from Dr. Blodgett. Oh, I'm so excited about today's podcast. Dr. Kelly Blodgett, who is I'll say biodentist.
Sure.
I know a little bit about being a biodentist. You teach people to think outside the box with their dental and oral health. Can you tell us a little bit about what it means to be a biodentist?
Yeah, I think it's the way I perceive it is it's almost the fulfillment of where you started in dental school to begin with, which is, you don't start with tooth drilling 101, right? You start with anatomy and physiology and looking at the entire body of the human being and understanding the entire nervous system, cardiovascular system, all that. And you would think like there should be a reason for all that understanding. And it turns out that everything in the mouth is connected to everything else in the body, not just through nerves and blood supply and lymphatics, but energetically as well. And I guess, I don't know about the title, but if we're going to call it, biodentist, holistic dentist, whatever, there's a lot of words out there, that dentists use.
And they're not regulated, right?
Correct. I mean, there are certain specialties within dentistry, endodontist, pedodontist, periodontist, oral surgeon, things like that. There's no specialty per se for holistic or biological dentistry. There are board certification programs, which I went through and, hold a couple of board certifications in naturopathic medical dentistry, for instance. But it's really our focus is to understand the ways in which a person's dental issues have impacted their overall health. Optimally, we would help them stay healthy from the get-go so that, their genetics and life energy can just express itself fully and they're healthy. But, of course, the majority of the people who come to see me they're quite off of that track and have suffered the consequences of the traditional drill and fill, treat one tooth at a time as though it's not connected to your rest of your body approach. So yeah, that's what I do every day.
Yeah. And I would imagine most people would have a hard time getting their head around the fact that what happens in your mouth can then impact your gut or impact, your elbow joint. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how that actually happens. How does oral health impact the rest of the body?
Sure. We could spend a lot of time on that one for sure. Well, I mean,
sure.
It's kind of funny because the first thing is the most obvious. It is the entrance to the GI tract. It's literally part of the entire tube that goes from one end of us to the other. And it kind of sets the pace if you think about it, right? Like the enzymes, for instance, that are present in your saliva help to digest your food. And so let's say somebody's on medication, for instance, that shuts down their salivary flow, which millions, if not billions of people are taking, then they're not digesting as well. Their food isn't broken down and therefore they're not absorbing as well and their systemic health gets worse. That's like one example. We're starting to better understand both through transdermal or transmucosal absorption in the mouth, as well as lymphatic absorption from our jaw bones and gum tissue, the extent to which toxins from, let's say, gum disease or mercury fillings or fluoride that we're absorbing constantly, how those things can impact your whole body health. The gut, of course, which is part of that. Anything that's in the mouth, let's just pick on mercury fillings because it's so obvious. Mercury comes with the whole skull and crossbones, sign on the box, but somehow miraculously, when you mix it up and stick it into a tooth, it's safe. But when you take it out, you have to have a mercury separator in your suction line system, which costs thousands of dollars. So it's kind of insanity if you think about it. Even the American Dental Association, it was kind of coincidental, I think, 2 months after COVID hit, they put out this press release saying we actually acknowledge that they do constantly, mercury fillings that is, do constantly give off mercury vapor. We think it's safe enough, unless you're, a woman of childbearing age or a child under 6. It's not safe for them, but everybody else, it's safe enough. It's craziness. But of course, through chewing, that mercury mixes with your food. That's the vapor, right? That's coming off your fillings, and you're swallowing it. On top of that, the vapor is coming off. Imagine if you're sitting there with your mouth open, sleeping at night, and breathing through your
Right, or grinding your teeth.
Yep, all that vapor is going into your lungs, which you absorb, just like you would, cigarette smoke or something like that, right? So it's amazing how it's all connected, but I don't know if it's because of the it doesn't hurt, so I don't think about it kind of a thinking. But obviously, it's usually when people become aware, they have suffered significantly or are suffering from chronic health decline, cancer, things like that. And it's like, wow, what an extent to have to go to start recognizing something so obvious that your mouth is in fact connected to the rest of your body.
Right. Right. And on that mercury amalgams, I remember it was probably 30 years ago. I was just starting in this field. And I remember thinking, hold on, mercury goes to my dentist's office. Practically in a hazmat kit, and then abracadabra, something happens when it goes into my mouth. So I actually had all my amalgams taken out about 30 years ago, and I remember my dentist saying, "You're nuts." And I hardly had any money at the time, so I had to budget for it. It took me months to be able to pay for it, but I felt like at that time, I really needed to do something because I knew that this was just a train wreck.
Yeah. Well, and you think about the energy of it as well. I mean, the release of mercury is just plain obvious. If you drop a compact fluorescent light bulb on the floor and the mercury, spills out, you literally have to bring in the hazmat team, right? I mean, that's the recommendation anyway, which is a very minute amount of mercury. It's not even 1% of what's in a average filling.
Really?
But then think about the energetics as well. When you put in one alloy, and then maybe somebody gets a gold crown or a porcelain fused on top of a gold crown or a dental implant or braces or, just starting adding up the metals in an electrolyte bath, which is your saliva. And all of a sudden energy can change. Now, for some people, they can tolerate a ton of that and they won't have symptoms. Other people, maybe two substances and their whole energy starts getting out of whack.
Really?
So, the concept of bio-individual thinking is critically important.
Yeah, because you don't know people's backgrounds. And, for example, I grew up on a farm, so I was surrounded by chemicals. It was the 70s and 80s. I was surrounded by chemicals. So maybe my body wouldn't have been able to handle a lifetime of all those amalgams in my mouth. But somebody else, maybe they have, I hate to use the word resilient, but maybe they're put together differently. It sounds like that's what you're saying.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. I mean, we all detox differently. Our gut health's different.
That's true. We all do detox differently. So, Dr. Blodgett, are amalgams still being used in dentistry today?
I hate to tell you, but yes.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, it's even in dental schools. most dental schools are still, as a matter of fact, I was talking with my hygienist this week because we're looking at having them do some of the restorative work because they're trained to do it. And I asked them about what was your experience like in hygiene school learning about restoring teeth? And they all told me the same thing. They hated doing it because they made them, now mind you, these gals graduated 2 years ago, right? So 2 years ago, they were being forced to put mercury fillings in people's teeth in Portland, Oregon, right?
Great.
It's supposed to be a very health-focused town and all this, right?
Absolutely.
Right? And it's like, that's interesting. Like, and they're standing on the idea that, well, they're strong, I mean, you can chew against them. And that's true. Like, that's not a lie to say that. Of course, it is a strong material, but at what cost, And in reality, are there other materials that are just as, they're no more expensive, ultimately, and just as much easy to place, if not perhaps easier to use other materials? So it's like, why are we still doing that? It's just because it's hard to move people's cheese, right? Like, to try to change the profession, it's like the guy who invented the arthroscopic knee surgery was almost laughed out of town and 50 years ago, and now every orthopedic surgeon does arthroscopy, right? You wouldn't imagine of cutting open a knee widely.
That's really true.
But dentistry is it's one of those very slow to change professions. At least that's been my observation.
Okay. Do you also think, this is a bit of a long question, I think most people, I don't know the percentage, are scared to go to see their dentist. And I know that's one of the reasons why you got into dentistry. You really felt, that still strong voice inside to get in there and change things. So do people just kind of, pun intended, I guess, grin and bear it? They get in the chair and they just say, okay, whatever you want to do it, because I just want to get out of here as quickly as possible. So they don't ask questions.
Well, I can't speak for how it is in any other practice. What I can tell you that to paint a picture for you of how the patients in my practice, by and large, are struck by a sense of calm and, dare I say, comfort and peace because of how we've designed a physical space where when they first come to our practice, we don't go into a dental chair. We spend time in what's called our wellness wing, where we've designed special rooms that have comfortable furniture. And, the hygienist who is, taking them on the journey of their new patient experience, they could be over there for a half an hour, 45 minutes, listening to their history and really getting to know that human being and their experience and their struggles and their health history. We want to develop relationships. Yeah. And then once we are going to a more clinical space, all of the information we gather is stuff that people can understand. 3-dimensional radiography, where it's not hard to understand when you see something 3-dimensional that you relate to, right? And photographs. I mean, we take high quality photographs with, every team member has their own camera, and we relate that to them so they can see what's going on with their own health. I think a lot of time when people are fearful, it's because they have a lack of understanding. And for good reason. Like when people just tell you to lean back and they start telling you things like, you need this or you should do that, and basically putting judgment on you, they're just sharing their judgment toward you. There's no understanding. So we start with the concept of, what's your goal for your health, right? And then from there, okay, well, if it's your goal to keep your teeth and have minimal dental work, if we're seeing issues, here's how we would go about addressing that, and they become a part of the decision-making process. Because I don't want to own people's health. It's their health. So when I tell them, if I tell them you need something, now I'm saying you need it, and it's my opinion that has been forced upon them, and I won't do that. So I think that once people feel a part of the experience, then the fear for most people, tends to dissipate. And that's one of the hardest things when I have people reaching out to me from around the globe, and they're like, who who is doing what you're doing in, let's say, Austin, Texas? I'm like, I don't know anybody that takes this kind of time. I mean, every new patient gets at least 2 hours in our practice where there's no clinical. We shut the entire practice down for new patient day. But I know that that's not the case in most practices. And it wasn't in mine for years. It took us a long time to see that, the way that we're going about this disconnects us from the human being we're trying to serve. And it becomes all about the tooth work, not about serving a human being. So, yeah, now that we're doing these, it's amazing.
And then it's, again, just focused on the mouth. And so if you're only focused on the mouth, then people just think, well, my mouth has nothing to do with my gut and has nothing to do with other body parts. But it sounds like you really are looking at the whole person, which is a bit shocking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it starts with the psycho-emotional, maybe spiritual and energetic connection with another person.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't make that, then the dentistry, in my mind, we're not going to go there. Once we have that connection and we know that we care about one another and we can, both be present. I'm just so not into putting dogma onto anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I really do want to meet their goals. So, and part of this started out, years ago. We had a woman who called up, and this was maybe 7 or 8 years ago. She called up and says, I've got 2 root canal teeth, and I can't tell you why, but they don't feel right. They never have felt right. And I think it's impacting my health. Every dentist I've seen says they're fine and they won't touch them, but I want them out of my head. And my front office person brought that story to me, and I thought, well, I've been trained to take out teeth very effectively and safely. And, if she wants them out of her body based on how she feels and what she's experiencing, who am I to tell her that your experience isn't real?
Exactly right.
And so we did, in fact, after talking with her about her options, we did take those 2 teeth out. When she came back 2 weeks later, it was as though a new human being walked through our door. The whole team was so struck by her transformation that it's like we all got it. And that was really the start of me moving into this biological sphere of care.
What were some of the things that were different about her after you removed the root canals?
Well, and here's what she told me. I will never forget it. So she was working in a naturopathic health clinic, first of all. So she's surrounded with, the best of the best for health management. And she felt like garbage. She had no energy. She was tired all the time. She just didn't feel like herself. 2 weeks later, she comes in and, she's bouncing off the walls and full of energy. And I'm like, well, okay, this is amazing. And I said, well, how are you feeling? She said, I can't believe how amazing I feel. She says, my husband is kind of upset though. And I'm thinking what? What? Why? Why is he upset? So I asked her, I said, why is he upset? She's like,
what did I do?
I have so much energy. He doesn't even know what to do with me. And I'm like, wow. I mean, of course it's funny to laugh, but what a blessing that she got her life back.
She got her life back.
Yeah. I mean, I hear this every single day when I'm meeting people from around the country. Like just this week, I was talking on the same morning. One woman was from South Carolina, one from Dallas, Texas. Their stories of health transformation, and their husbands had both traveled with them and corroborated that, yep, I thought this was going to be the biggest bunch of baloney, and now I have my wife back. And it was worth every bit of effort. And I'm like, it's just incredible. Yeah.
You're doing the right work when you hear comments like that from people. Yeah. And honestly, Dr. Blodgett, who would ever think that root canal could result in her just not feeling good systemically? Her entire body, she didn't have the energy. She sounded like she didn't have the zest for living anymore.
Yep.
It boggles the mind.
Yeah. Well, one of the tools that we have put on our website is an interactive tooth energy meridian chart. And I refer people to it all the time, just to go do an accounting of what you've had done in your own mouth. Like most people have had a panoramic x-ray. just get your own panoramic x-ray, have the dentist tell you like which tooth is number 2 and 15 and 18 and 31, and you can do your own math and start looking at like, what am I experiencing in my oral health and what am I experiencing systemically, and do I see any connections? You may or you may not. Like, I'm not saying that it's not, if I have learned one thing in the past 25 years, it is that health is not linear. You know,
That's really true. Yeah.
Even the energy of that human being sitting next to me, whether it's a friend, a coworker, a patient, a mentor, their energy affects my energy.
It does.
So why would we not focus first on enhancing the energetic experience of those we serve before we go into an environment that, of course, is going to be it requires vulnerability and potential for discomfort. You know what I mean? We have chosen to take a very different path. Anybody can do it. I'm just to the point in my career now where, thank the Lord, I have dentists who are starting to ask, like, hey, could you coach me on how to do this? And it would be just what a wonderful way I could use my energy to share. How we've done that.
Right. So now you're moving into mentoring, it sounds like.
I hope to, yes, yeah.
I know the farmer side of food. I grew up on a little farm. I raised chickens. I named my chickens. So I know the humane treatment of animals can really impact the nutrition of the protein. Honestly, this is one of the reasons why I love ButcherBox so much. I'm new to the ButcherBox family. I got to tell you, at first I thought, home delivery of meat, that's probably going to be outside my budget. But I got to tell you, I was shocked by the price. It's a great deal. And I love that I get to choose what's in my box. And I know the protein that's in the box is produced by small family farmers who really care about the humane treatment of animals. And that is one of my driving forces when it comes to consuming protein. What I also love about my ButcherBox box that just arrived is the high quality. I love that I can choose grass-fed. All of their protein is grass-fed. I may not eat a lot of protein, but when I do, I want it to be as high a quality as I can possibly afford. And this is why I'm loving ButcherBox. Many of you also know that I'm a big fan of bacon, and it doesn't take a lot of bacon to really flavor a meal, so I use it on a pretty regular basis. Biggest problem for me is that most bacon that you're going to buy at a supermarket contains nitrites and nitrates, which gives color and extends the shelf life, but it also increases my risk of cancer. No, thank you. So I'm a huge fan now of ButcherBox, and I reached out to them, and they've offered an amazing deal for my listeners, especially with Thanksgiving dinner right around the corner. And I got to tell you, that can be a huge source of stress for most people. Not anymore. ButcherBox is offering my listeners a free turkey and $10 off your first box. So sign up today at butcherbox.com/Enos, E-N-O-S, and then use the code ENOS10 to get a 10 to 14 pound turkey absolutely free in your first box. And you also get $10 off on your first box. Go to butcherbox.com/Enos and use the code ENOS10 to claim this amazing deal. So you bring up root canals. I've actually never had one, but I know that they're incredibly common. I think kind of like the mercury amalgams, I didn't understand that, but maybe I also don't have a good understanding of a root canal, because isn't the tooth dead and you're kind of just trying to resurrect it, and you could just get rid of the tooth maybe and not go through all the trauma.
Yeah. So here's the problem, right? Is that I would say maybe starting about 100 years ago, roughly, when root canal technology, if we want to call it that, became good enough that most dentists could do it. The idea in that time was like, well, I mean, it's a tooth. Of course you want to keep every tooth in your mouth. And I get that argument, of course. Like, it's an aesthetic concern. It's a functional concern. Absolutely, totally get that. The problem is, a tooth, not the part that we see, right? When I give a big cheesy grin, we're looking at enamel. And that is relatively impervious to anything except acids, which is what breaks teeth down in the first place for people who get decay. However, the dentin, which is the second layer of the tooth, which is probably 80 to 85% of your actual tooth structure, it's porous, just like a sponge. So let's say you have a root canal, whether the tooth was traumatized, had decay, who knows what, the nerve died or it's mad. They remove the pulp material, the nerve, the blood supply, the lymphatics inside the tooth. They remove all that stuff, clean it out to whatever extent they do, and then seal that inner skinny canal. So you seal the inner part of the tooth. How does that change the fact that the entirety of the root itself is porous like a sponge, right? So now that you have no immune system connection to that tooth, how is your body going to deal with the slow migration of microbes through that porous tooth structure and into your jawbone? And the truth is that if you have a functional immune system, it can stay asymptomatic, meaning it doesn't hurt. The tooth doesn't. But energetically, the very second that the tooth dies, instantly that tooth is now disconnected from the energetic field of your body. So that will think of it like if you're an electrician, you put a resistor in the circuit. You're literally decreasing energetic flow. And that's why it's so helpful. Let's say, for instance, upper first molars, one of the most common teeth in the human body to get root canal because it comes into your mouth at 6 years of age. And people, kids don't know how to manage their oral health. So they commonly get decayed, they break down, they get root canal. Those two teeth are connected to the thyroid gland. And if you look at like the number of people who come in reporting of hypothyroidism, having root canals on one or both upper first molars, the percentage of that is so high. It's unbelievable.
Really? Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I would love to say I'm making this stuff up, but it's like, I've just observed patient after patient after patient after patient.
Right.
We tend to see 12 to 15 new patients every Monday. And it's like, wow, the connection, similarly to your question about gut health, I could share a story with you if we want to take the time about a gentleman. Well, here's the scenario. Gut health and teeth, okay? This gentleman came to my practice probably 2 years pre-COVID, and he had mercury fillings all in his teeth, and I had suggested, why don't we take the mercury out, based on his goals of wanting to be healthy. We'll take those out, and we'll do either fillings or ceramic inlays or something that is minimally invasive as possible. So, he goes home to think about it. He decides to get a second opinion from a dentist who's on his insurance plan. And that dentist says, well, I think we can just crown everything, which means you're going to literally rip off every bit of enamel that's built on your tooth to protect you and glue on this metal-based crown because it's on his molars, right?
Yep.
So he gets these 4 crowns. Within 1 year, 3 of those teeth die, and he gets root canals. And he goes from having a lifetime of normal bowel movements to now he can't, like every single day he's just having diarrhea. He can't keep anything down. Thankfully, his sister has been a long time patient, and she says, you need to go back and see Dr. Blodgett. So it was so interesting, I'll never forget it. He calls me a month after COVID kicks in, right? So in Oregon at that time, we're out, right? We're not supposed to be practicing except for emergencies. Now, in my opinion, somebody who cannot digest food, that's an emergency.
It is an emergency, right.
So we go in to see him. He's got these 3 root canals. He's like, I just want them out. And I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, what a waste, of course, right? Because it was it was all unnecessary, but it is what it is. Yeah, it is what it is. We take out those 3 teeth. And by the way, at this point in time when his teeth are in there and he can't absorb anything, the guy is so bloated and puffed up like a balloon. Like his whole body was not doing well. We take out the teeth. He comes back 2 weeks later. He's lost like 20 to 25 pounds of water weight. He's had normal poops since the day the teeth came out. And I'm like, you can't make this stuff up, I mean, it's incredible. And of course, all those molars are on I believe it's the large intestine meridian, which, of course, has something to do with having a regular poop or not. So really interesting stuff.
Okay, so weird question, but maybe not so weird because this conversation is absolutely amazing. So it sounds like the teeth are a little bit like reflexology of the feet and hands, where you rub your bottom of your foot and it corresponds to your eyelid or your sacrum. Are the teeth kind of like a reflexology pattern?
Yeah, I mean, just think of acupuncture meridians throughout the body. So, I mean, I can't explain why when the acupuncturist, puts a needle in my thumb that it's helping something with my right knee. I don't understand that.
I don't either.
I just know it works. And I know that when we clear up infectious issues and energetic blockages in people's mouths and normalize it, which, that is we are not taught how to do that in dental school, unfortunately. There are a lot of tricks that I have learned and techniques and technologies that we utilize, things I've learned in the past 5 to 7 years that have changed how we serve patients drastically. The good news is we actually see people get healthy now, which is pretty awesome.
In shocking ways, actually. Who would have ever thought you'd have normal bowel movements after having, some old dental work removed? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
it's so common.
It certainly sounds like a day in your life is fascinating. One of the reasons the main reason I started this podcast is I don't want to get cancer again. And I don't want anybody who's listening and anybody I love, I don't want anybody to ever get cancer. But it sounds like there are some things we can do in our health with our mouth that could lower cancer risk. And one of those questions I have, I've never been a super big fan of fluoride. I've never really understood how putting it in water, hitting your gut, how does that bounce up and keep my teeth from getting cavities? Are there things that we're currently doing, like the root canals and maybe, fluoride in water that maybe are not doing the things that we think they're doing in our body?
Yeah, I would absolutely say so. And I think that, gosh, when we look at the medical model, the idea of what is cancer to begin with, because you're bringing up such a good point. I had a patient reach out to me 6 weeks ago. It's such a powerful story that I want to share it. She lives about an hour south of Portland, and she reached out to me and said, I just got a diagnosis of cancer, and I'm not her regular dentist. It's like she comes to me I removed a root canal, I put in a ceramic implant, things like that. So she was diagnosed with lymphatic cancer in her neck, and she was told, we need to start radiation and chemo immediately. And I said, well, time out a second here. I think we should verify that there's no risk going on in your mouth first, because you have to think about what drains through that lymphatic chain. It's everything in your head. So I said, I would highly advise before you start anything that you get up here. I'll stay late, whatever. We've got to see you. Well, we updated a 3-dimensional cone beam scan to do an assessment from the top of her head to the mid neck, and lo and behold, we saw some areas in her wisdom teeth sites where she had them removed 30 plus years ago that looked, let's just say, suspicious. I can't diagnostically say anything from an X-ray or a CT scan, but I said, this just looks highly suspicious to me. If it were possible, I mean, this is just kind of Christmas list, right? I said, if it were possible, I would suggest you get to St. Louis, Missouri, see a doctor by the name of Simon Yu, and have him do some acupuncture meridian assessment, because I know him personally and I know how he practices. Well, as it worked out, she actually did go and see him, and not looking at x-rays at all, just using energetic measurement. When he measured her wisdom teeth sites, they were instead of being at a balanced range on our ours read from our measurements go from 0 to 150 would be balanced, right? So you don't want to see things at 75. You don't want to see things at 25. 50 would be balanced. And her measurements were in the 25 to 30 range in her Wisdom 2 sites. So by the grace of God, she was able to fly back after she saw him on a Monday. I cleaned up her cavitations 2 days later. That's what we call a cavitation lesion. I sent that material that was in her jawbone to a DNA lab in Denver, where they found on both their oral panel of all these different microbes that they're assessing, the highest content was parasites, and of like the 14 Lyme associated bugs on their Lyme panel, 8 of those 14 Lyme microbes were in her jawbone, which is just shocking.
Oh my
And so
gosh.
now she's on treatment for managing her parasitic and Lyme infections that the Dr. Yu is helping her with. And, like having supportive ozone therapies, things like that. And her body now has the chance to heal itself rather than let's go through this process of killing you with radiation and chemo. So not to say that there aren't appropriate times for that, of course. However, we have to rule out what the contribution of the mouth could potentially be. And here's the kicker. When she came to see me on that first visit, I said, because she tells me that day, she's like, I just want to make sure that I'll be able to get out by noon because my chemo starts today. And I'm like, what do you mean your chemo starts today? I said, did you get dental clearance for this? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, how on earth did that happen? She's like, well, I went to my Kaiser dentist, and he said everything looked fine. And so they gave me dental clearance. I'm like, if you don't know what to look for, how in the hell can you give somebody clearance, know?
Right.
So I'm so glad to say and this is what was fascinating. She came back 2 weeks later to get her stitches out. And I hear this over and over and over again. And for people who are struggling with health issues, they really have no idea how much better they can feel until they manage this stuff. But her comment was, I can't describe it any other way except to say my entire body and spirit feels lighter. Like I feel unburdened. And I'm like, wow, it's a shock to go from a state of feeling like I think I'm going to potentially die to I know and I trust that my body has intelligence and has the ability to heal itself, provided we remove the roadblocks that are in front of us. So, it's like that's what I hope through our practice and God willing, many others over time, that we can actually help people see you have to look in the mouth first. It's the number one roadblock. Root canals, cavitations, mercury fillings, fluoride exposure, which you brought up. Like, nobody needs fluoride, right? For how many millennia were people eating whole foods, not getting tooth decay, and they weren't having, adding fluoride to the top of the mountain stream,
Right.
It's crazy.
It's amazing. We survived for so many years without fluoride.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too. You look in like Colorado, there are places where, due to the rock formations and the minerals that come off of the land through which the water goes, there's a high level of fluoride, and those people have a higher risk for dental fluorosis, which is like the malformation of teeth, and skeletal fluorosis.
Interesting.
It's like, okay, like why would we bother doing that to people? That makes no sense.
So it just goes to show you, in that natural example, fluoride consumed systemically in water, it maybe isn't our best bet. And there are still municipalities in our country that are adding fluoride to water, correct?
Oh, I think most, yes. I mean, I know Portland, Oregon is one of the few that isn't. Of course, these days, most people eat processed foods that are made in areas where it is fluoridated. And so every time they open a can of beans or a kombucha that was made, in a different city, there's going to be fluoride there. So, figuring out how to minimize risk is probably a healthy thing and a wise choice.
That's interesting. I hadn't considered fluoride water, used for things like kombucha and some of those examples you gave. That's interesting. So we're probably, even though I have a filter and all these different things on my water, and I'd like to think I'm not getting that much fluoride. If I'm buying processed things or eating in restaurants,
Yep.
yeah, I'm getting systemic fluoride.
Yeah. Which again, like I think we're all going to get exposed to stuff, right? I had somebody
Right.
ping me just this week about like, do you guys use a 3D cone beam scan? Because isn't that dangerous? And I'm like, if you get on a flight from New York to Portland, you're going to get X-ray exposure. As much as a full set of dental X-rays you will get flying across the country. We're always exposed. That's why, like, we have to trust that our body's system and support that system, of course, knows
Right.
how to manage the chronic oxidative exposures that we experience. It's part of life.
It is part of life. And we have native and non-native. I mean, we get a lot of radiation from cell phones, and they just put a 5G tower in across the street from my house, which I'm really unhappy about. Nobody asked me. Nobody got my feedback. Um, so I'm really trying to avoid getting cancer again. Do you have some advice for me, which of course is going to translate to everybody listening? Where's a good place for me to start with my oral health to lower my cancer risk?
Yeah. Well, certainly you can come see me. I mean, that's an option. We see a lot of people from 3+ hours away who
I'm
drive
sure.
all the time.
Hmm.
And of course, you can pretty much fly from 3 hours from anywhere in the country too. But, that's not an option for everybody. I do receive a number of messages through Instagram where people ask, like, who can I see in, and then you name the city. Honestly,
Right.
there really aren't a lot of practices that do exactly what we do. I know a handful in the country. And
Hmm.
if you're lucky enough to be, near Austin, Texas, or, Connecticut, or a couple others, Salt Lake City, Utah, there are some places where I could say, you know what, I would go to that dentist, and I think the world of them. It won't be Blodgett Dental
Hmm.
Care, 100%. It won't
Yeah.
be that, and it'll be a different energy, but they're great people. Um,
Okay.
I do advise if people are like, well, I really would prefer to find somebody in my own city because of the
Hmm.
convenience. I totally understand that. You're going to have to do research. So start
Yeah.
with you could go to the International Academy of Biological Dentistry and Medicine's website and
Okay.
look at their list of dentists. You could go to the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology website. Uh, I'm a member of both. So you can start there. But I would warn people that some people are like, they just trade one dogma for another. Like, well, I used to do root canals, and now root canals are a sin and, the bane of my existence. Well, you know what? I don't, there are certainly a lot of health risks associated with root canals. I think there are a lot of ways they can degrade health. But sometimes a root canal is the best solution out of a bunch of crappy
Okay.
ones.
Yeah.
So I think it's fair to be non-dogmatic and to consider all options. So you can investigate somebody's thoughtfulness by calling their office and asking some questions of the front office team. One, you're going to find out how well trained has this team, how much investment has been made in their own education and the time that they're given to be thoughtful in their responses. That's a good place to start. Because if they're like, oh, doctor never does or always does or whatever, it's like, that's
Right.
more dogma. If they're like, that's a great question, and frankly, I don't know the answer, like, I'm going to do some research and get back to you on that. Boy, now we're talking, right? Now we're talking about thoughtful consideration
Right.
of your health.
Right.
So, but it's going to take work. It's going to take work. It's okay because, like, let's say you hope to maintain that relationship with that dentist for 10, 20, 30 years. Just like a marriage, wouldn't you want to have chosen that relationship intentionally? Like we would never think to rely on our dental or medical or auto insurance company to make our marriage connection for us, right? But our physician, who's arguably gets to know us very, very well, like, are we just going to pick them off of a list randomly? I don't think so. So take your time, be thoughtful. It's worth that intentional effort.
It really is. And you bring up a lot of really good points. And I'm going to tag in our show notes those two associations you mentioned so that people can do a little bit of research. And then what about just what kind of daily habits can somebody start to help lower cancer risk starting in their mouth?
Yeah, good question. I love this question because my response is typically not dental. And I need
Okay.
to, I would be helpful to live by this as well, which is to find your time and space of parasympathetic support, to not be in the fight or flight all day. I mean, with the stuff I have to do every day, there's a lot of go, 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 and there's a lot of intentional focus. Personally, I find peace and solace in playing music. I either sit at the piano, pick up a guitar, do something because, 10, 15, 20 minutes a day of getting into that meditative musical state for me, it really helps me stay balanced.
Right.
Um, and what's interesting is the fluid flow of your teeth becomes health focused, meaning fluid goes from inside the teeth to out. When we're in that fight or flight state, things tend to reverse and are able to come into the tooth. So it really does have dental benefits to get into that, whether it's yoga, meditation, a nice walk with your dog, whatever brings you to that place of my heart rate feels well, I feel centered. That's going to help your dental health more than you know. It'll also help you digest better, which is awesome. So, slow down when you're eating. Take time to plate your food.
Okay.
You could go to talk to anybody you want about what they think is the best product for this, that. I'm not dogmatic about toothbrush, water pick, manual brush, mechanical brush. I mean, I really don't care. I personally like a mechanical brush because I just like the way it works. Like some people love flossing, some people love oil pulling. Whatever, if you have something that works for you, and when you do see your dentist, they're like, wow, I'm so impressed by the state of your health. Keep doing what you're doing. The quality of your saliva is going to be way more impactful than what toothpaste you use or what oral rinse you're using, because you're only exposed to the toothpaste for 5 minutes tops.
Fascinating. So, okay, so the health of our saliva changes the health in our mouth, which changes the health in our body.
And in order to have healthy saliva, it comes from your blood. In order to have great, healthy blood, you have to be detoxing well and have good nutrient absorption through your gut. In order to have good gut health, you have to have good oral health. It's a loop. Everything's connected.
It is a loop. Oh my gosh, I love that. I have never thought about having high quality saliva. I just, you're blowing my mind in a good way. This is good.
Oh, good. Good. Well, I would encourage for any of your listeners and for you, if you haven't read the book called Gut, G-U-T, it's written by a German physician named Julia Enders, E-N-D-E-R-S. And Julia isn't the typical American spelling. It's a little different. But if you just put in gut, you'll find her book. She has a whole section about saliva. And it's not a book about dentistry at all. But what you start to learn about the physiology and biochemistry of saliva is mind-blowing. It's so awesome. And it's a very helpful book just to understand gut health in general. I love
I've never
it.
thought about that. But I do see products now. I just saw this at Costco the other day, behind the counter at getting a prescription, about something about dry mouth. So I'm assuming if you've got a dry mouth, you don't have healthy saliva.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you could have the best saliva in the world, but if it's kept in your blood, what good would it do you, right? Yeah. So, yeah, and that is one of the downsides to pharmaceuticals is that the vast majority, not all, but the vast majority will impact salivary flow. So, like, if that's the case, get with probably either a functional nutritionist, a naturopath, a biological dentist, somebody who can help you figure out how do we optimize salivary flow and reduce, long-term acidic risk. I mean, ultimately, that's going to be part of the challenge. Might you need some enzymatic support because the enzymes aren't present when you're chewing, so that your gut can better break down, your foods and proteins and fats and all that,
I love this because, somebody may not have the budget to go in and replace a lot of dental work, but you can slow down how fast you're eating. You can get some enzymatic support, and you can do some basic things that could actually start to change your entire health by changing the saliva that's in your mouth.
Yeah. And the other thing that I would acknowledge, because I think it's ever present for so many people and it's so important, is if you have experienced or continue to experience fear or shame or guilt about the state of your oral health, offering some grace and forgiveness to yourself for whatever you've experienced in your life around it. Like most of us are doing the best that we can at the time, right? Based on what we understand. And so, things are what they are. And all you can do is move forward and try to figure out how to better manage things in the future. I help a lot of people where we might come up with a plan. And, my way I describe it is I will draw a map for you. You drive. So you determine whether we go 100 miles an hour or 1 mile per hour. I don't care. As long as we're moving in the right direction, either way works. And they both move toward health.
I love that. You draw the map and you can go as fast or as slowly as you'd like to go. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because this conversation, of course, my mind is going a mile a minute. Okay, I want to go see you. I want to go do this. I want my husband to come. And, I can't change everything this week, but I can start to make some changes. I love, again, slowing down while I eat and staying more in parasympathetic, which parasympathetic is that calm and peace and grace for yourself and grace for humanity, kind of a mental health where you're just doing whatever it takes to stay calm. For you, it's playing music. For me, maybe it's going for a walk, doing some yoga, reading my Bible, whatever it is, figuring out how to stay in that space of being just more calm and peaceful.
Yeah, we could all use more of it.
We sure could. We sure could. Oh, Dr. Blodgett, I can't thank you enough for coming on my podcast. Why Did I Get Cancer? I have learned so much today, things I'd never thought about. And I just want to thank you for just being so real and transparent and educating me.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It's one of the greatest blessings of my life to be able to connect with amazing other human beings like you. And, hopefully we can help somebody else who's suffering see that there are different ways to approach life where health can be the focus rather than disease prevention. You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah. Yes, I love that. And it's just sometimes that just a small shift in your attitude and outlook. Yeah. Well, thank you again. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Deborah.
I love my cell phone. I love my AirPods, I admit it. But what I don't love is the radiation and electromagnetic frequencies that are coming out of both of those things. So all of a sudden, I got this ad on Instagram about this product called WaveBlock. Honestly, it seemed too good to be true. So I called the owner. His name is Ben, and we had an amazing conversation about this product he created basically to protect his kids from EMFs that were coming out of cell phones and headphones and you name it. He explained the whole process to me, how he took it to Europe to get it tested, and how it really can block the EMFs that are coming out of our devices. So I've got a great coupon code for all of our listeners today. Go to the WaveBlock website. It's in today's show notes. Use the code ENOS20, and you can get 20% off of his products. Two of the products that I'm currently using are his wraparound WaveBlock for my AirPods, and then I also just got a new cell phone, and he has a sticker that can go on the back of the cell phone that is also going to help to knock down the EMFs. It just gives me a little bit more comfort, I think, with using
please be sure to consult with a medical professional. And thank you for listening.